The 20 most important biblical characters in the Old Testament. In this fascinating journey, we invite you to explore the ancient past and discover the 20 most influential characters who shaped the course of biblical history. From legendary figures to visionary leaders, each protagonist carries timeless lessons and legacies that have transcended generations. Get ready to immerse yourself in tales full of intrigue, faith, and passion as we unravel together the mysteries and meanings behind these iconic biblical characters. Number 20. Adam. Adam, a central figure in the Old Testament of the Bible, is widely recognized as the first man created by God. His story appears in the early chapters of Genesis, establishing the foundations of creation and the origin of humanity according to the Judeo-Christian tradition. According to the biblical account, God formed Adam from the dust of the earth and gave him life by breathing the breath of life into his nostrils. He was placed in the Garden of Eden, a paradisiacal place created by God, and was given the responsibility to care for and manage this environment. Additionally, he was given the power to name all the animals and creatures that God had created, reflecting his authority over creation. However, despite his privileged position in Eden, Adam faced a fundamental test. God forbade him from eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Although Adam enjoyed a close relationship with God and the company of the animals, God noticed that Adam needed a suitable companion. Thus, Eve was created from one of Adam's ribs. Adam and Eve lived in harmony until they fell into the temptation of the serpent, representing deceit and disobedience. They ate from the forbidden fruit, resulting in the fall of man and the entry of sin into the world. As a consequence, Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden and faced difficulties and challenges in the outside world. The Bible also records Adam's genealogy, tracing his lineage to Noah and beyond. Number 19. Eve. Eve, an iconic figure in the Old Testament of the Bible, is one of the first women mentioned in human history. Her story is found in the book of Genesis, and her role in biblical narrative has inspired numerous interpretations and reflections throughout the centuries. According to the biblical account, Eve was the first woman created by God. She was formed from one of Adam's ribs, the first man, and was presented as his companion and suitable helper. Eve shared with Adam the Garden of Eden, a place of beauty and harmony created by God for humanity. However, the pivotal moment in Eve's story revolves around temptation and the fall into sin. The deception of the serpent, which actually represents Satan, led Eve to disobey the divine command by eating the forbidden fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Seduced by promises of wisdom and power, Eve took the fruit and shared it with Adam, who also ate it. Eve and Adam's disobedience had far-reaching consequences. Their sin led them to lose their state of innocence and become aware of good and evil, resulting in their expulsion from Eden. From then on, humanity experienced suffering, hard work, and mortality as punishment for their disobedience. Number 18. Enoch. Enoch, an iconic figure in the Old Testament of the Bible, is known for his mysterious story and close relationship with God. His story is primarily found in the book of Genesis and briefly mentioned in other parts of the Bible, such as the book of Hebrews. Enoch was the seventh direct descendant of Adam and Eve, and his story is particularly notable due to his unique fate. Unlike most biblical figures who lived long lives, Enoch is said to have lived only 365 years before being taken by God. This intriguing mention of his departure in Genesis chapter 5 verse 24 says, "And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." This enigmatic passage has given rise to various interpretations throughout history. The traditional interpretation suggests that Enoch was taken to heaven in body and soul without experiencing physical death, making him one of the few biblical characters to achieve this feat, along with the prophet Elijah. Number 17. Aaron. Within the pages of the Old Testament of the Bible, Aaron emerges as a transcendental and essential figure in the history of the people of Israel. His influence extends from the moment God chose him as the older brother of Moses to his crucial role in leadership during the exodus from Egypt and the subsequent formation of the Israelite nation. Aaron, a descendant of the tribe of Levi, was appointed by God to play a fundamental role in the liberation of the Hebrew people from slavery in Egypt. Alongside his brother Moses, Aaron served as the mediator between God and the people, helping to communicate divine messages and performing signs and miracles that demonstrated God's authority and power. One of the most iconic moments in his life was when, alongside Moses, he confronted the Pharaoh demanding the release of the Hebrew people and, through his staff, unleashed the plagues that would ultimately lead to Israel's liberation. The priesthood also played a crucial role in Aaron's life. God chose him as the first high priest of Israel, making him the spiritual leader of the nation. Aaron and his Levite descendants were responsible for carrying out the religious rituals and sacrifices that maintained the connection between God and the people. His role in the service at the tabernacle, and later in the temple, symbolized the intercession between humanity and the divine. However, Aaron also faced challenges and difficult moments. During the period when Moses ascended Mount Sinai to receive the tablets of the law, the Israelite people, under the influence of some wayward leaders, engaged in the worship of the golden calf. Aaron allowed the construction of the idol, which incurred God's wrath and revealed human weaknesses even in a respected leader. Number 16. Jacob. Jacob, an emblematic figure of the Old Testament, stands as a figure whose spiritual and personal journey transcends the confines of time and culture. Also known as Israel, his name symbolizes the very essence of a nation and a faith. From his birth, Jacob was immersed in an intricate web of family relationships. Son of Isaac and Rebekah, his story is intertwined with that of his twin brother Esau. The rivalry between the two brothers, marked by the supplanting of the birthright and paternal blessing, set the tone for much of Jacob's narrative. Jacob's life is marked by a series of trials and tribulations that forged his character. His flight from home after deceiving Esau led him to the house of his uncle Laban. Here, Jacob experienced both love and deceit as he married Laban's daughters Leah and Rachel. He worked hard for years, earning the right to possess part of Laban's flock. However, it is in his encounter with God in Peniel where his journey takes on a profound spiritual dimension. Jacob wrestled with an angel throughout the night, and at dawn, he received a blessing and a new name, Israel, which means, he who struggles with God. This episode symbolizes the internal struggle and the process of transformation that Jacob experienced throughout his life. The reconciliation with Esau, after years of estrangement, is another highlight in Jacob's life. This event represents a healing of past wounds and the restoration of family ties. Number 15. Sarah. Within the rich tapestry of biblical figures that shape the narrative of the Old Testament, Sarah stands as a pillar of faith, patience, and a lasting testimony of divine providence. Her story is intertwined with God's promise to Abraham and the foundation of the Jewish people. Through her journey, she becomes a symbol of perseverance, sacrifice, and the importance of trusting in divine promises. Sarah, whose name was originally Sarai, was the wife of Abraham, considered the father of nations in the Jewish, Christian, and Islamic religions. Her story begins in the book of Genesis, where God chooses Abraham to be the progenitor of a great nation, despite their advanced age and lack of children. This divine promise became a challenge of faith for Sarah, as her infertility filled her with sadness and frustration. However, Sarah's story is not just a tale of obstacles but also of learning and spiritual evolution. In an attempt to fulfill God's promise, Sarah allowed Abraham to have a child with her maidservant Hagar, who bore Ishmael. But the true blessing was yet to come, as finally, in her old age, Sarah conceived and gave birth to her son Isaac. This miraculous arrival sealed God's promise and confirmed Sarah's unwavering faith in his providence. The act of naming Isaac holds profound meaning in Sarah's life. His name means laughter, as Sarah, upon hearing about her pregnancy at an advanced age, had initially laughed at the idea of becoming a mother. But that laughter turned into genuine joy and a recognition of God's wonderful work. Sarah's laughter symbolizes the initial surprise and disbelief, followed by overwhelming joy and gratitude for the fulfillment of the divine promise. Number 14. Joshua. Within the Old Testament of the Bible, the figure of Joshua emerges as a brave and bold leader who left a profound mark on the history of the people of Israel. His name means, "The Lord is salvation," which foreshadows his central role in the liberation and conquest of the Promised Land. Joshua was a disciple and successor of Moses, who appointed him as the leader of the Israelites after his own death. This transition of leadership was not an easy task, as it involved guiding a numerous and diverse nation to an unknown and challenging land. Joshua proved to be an outstanding leader by remaining steadfast in his faith and commission, despite the difficulties. One of the most iconic episodes associated with Joshua is the conquest of Jericho. Following divine instructions, Joshua and his people carried out an unusual strategy. They marched around the city once a day for 6 days, and on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times and blew trumpets, resulting in the walls of Jericho collapsing. This event not only showcases Joshua's faith and obedience but also how divine intervention supported their efforts. Joshua's bravery also manifested in battles against the Canaanites and other peoples in the Promised Land. Throughout these military campaigns, Joshua proved to be a tactical and strategic leader, inspiring his army to fight with determination. Although the conquest involved struggles and conflicts, Joshua always sought to establish justice and the observance of God's law in the new land. Number 13. Deborah. Deborah is a biblically significant figure in the Old Testament. She is known for being a prophetess, judge, and leader of the people of Israel in a crucial time in their history. Her story is told in the book of Judges, chapters 4 and 5. Living in a time when Israel was subjected to the oppression of the Canaanites, Deborah emerged as a prominent figure in a society dominated by men. She stood out not only for her wisdom and discernment but also for her ability to receive and communicate messages from God. It is said that she had the custom of sitting under a palm tree, known as Deborah's palm, where people would come to seek her counsel and guidance. The culmination of Deborah's story lies in the victory over the Canaanites under the leadership of Barak. God instructed Barak to gather an army and confront the Canaanites led by Sisera. However, Barak felt the need for Deborah to accompany him in battle to ensure that God's will was with them. Although she agreed, Deborah prophesied that the victory over Sisera would be delivered into the hands of a woman, which turned out to be a significant prediction. After the Israelites obtained victory in the battle, Deborah's song in chapter 5 of the book of Judges stands out as a hymn of praise and gratitude to God for his intervention. This song not only celebrates the victory but also highlights the courage of the leaders and the crucial role of women in society and in the struggle for freedom. Number 12. Samson. Samson is one of the most iconic and fascinating characters in the Old Testament of the Bible. His story is found in the book of Judges, chapters 13 to 16. Known for his supernatural strength and tragic fate, Samson personifies human complexity, internal struggle, and the relationship between weakness and strength. According to the biblical account, Samson was a judge of Israel born in a time when the people of Israel were under the rule of the Philistines, an enemy people. From his birth, Samson was designated as a Nazirite, which meant he had to abstain from certain practices and behaviors, such as not drinking wine or cutting his hair, as a display of special dedication to God. Samson's most famous story revolves around his relationship with Delilah. Philistine leaders bribed Delilah to discover the secret of Samson's strength. Despite 3 failed attempts at betrayal, she finally gave in and revealed that his strength lay in his uncut hair. Once Samson fell asleep in Delilah's lap, she called the Philistines, who cut his hair, weakened him, and captured him. However, The end of Samson's story also speaks of his repentance and redemption. Although he had lost his physical strength, he regained his connection with God in prison. In a final act of sacrifice, Samson prayed to God to restore his strength one last time so that he could avenge the Philistines. By toppling the pillars of a Philistine temple, Samson killed thousands of his enemies and lost his life in the process. Number 11. Ruth. Within the rich tapestry of biblical characters that populate the Old Testament, the figure of Ruth shines with a special light, standing out for her unwavering loyalty, generous love, and the hope she displayed even in difficult times. Her story, recorded in the book of Ruth, transcends time and remains a source of inspiration for present and future generations. Ruth, a Moabite woman, became a vital link in the genealogy of Jesus Christ, highlighting the importance of her role in biblical history. Her story begins in dark times when she, her sister-in-law Orpah, and her mother-in-law Naomi were widowed after the death of their husbands. In the midst of this adversity, Ruth made a decision that would change her life and those around her. Despite the option to return to her family and her homeland, Ruth decided to stay with Naomi and accompany her to Bethlehem, showing a loyalty and love that transcended blood ties. Ruth's humility and sacrifice are evident when she starts working in the fields of a man named Boaz to provide sustenance for her mother-in-law and herself. Boaz, moved by Ruth's devotion and willingness to work hard, protects her and ultimately becomes her kinsman redeemer. This tale of love and redemption between Ruth and Boaz highlights the importance of loyalty and how acts of kindness and generosity can transform lives. Number 10. Jeremiah. Within the vast stage of the Old Testament in the Bible, there stands out a figure whose name resonates with deep reflections and warning messages: Jeremiah. This Hebrew prophet, born around 655 BC in Anatot, a small city near Jerusalem, played a crucial role in a tumultuous moment in Israel's history. Jeremiah stands as an example of the prophetic calling, someone chosen by God to convey divine messages to the people. Throughout his life, he faced the challenge of proclaiming prophecies of judgment and restoration, often in a context of opposition and rejection from authorities and the general populace. His deep empathy and personal suffering, along with his unwavering commitment to his mission, make Jeremiah a notable figure. One of the most well-known aspects of Jeremiah's narrative is his calling to be a prophet, as narrated in the first chapter of the book bearing his name. Though initially doubting his ability to speak for God due to his youth and inexperience, God assured him of his presence and guidance in every step of his prophetic journey. This divine promise strengthened Jeremiah to fulfill his task, which involved facing resistance and persecution. Throughout his ministry, Jeremiah conveyed striking messages of repentance and hope. He predicted the destruction of Jerusalem and the Babylonian captivity, warning the people about the consequences of their disobedience. However, he also offered a vision of restoration and renewal, pointing toward a time when God would bring his people back to their land and renew their relationship with him. Number 9. Ezekiel. Ezekiel, a central biblical figure in the Old Testament, emerges as a prophet and priest whose life and teachings have left a profound imprint on religious and spiritual history. His story is found in the book of Ezekiel, part of both the Hebrew and Christian Bible, presenting a narrative rich in prophetic visions, messages of divine judgment, and, at the same time, promises of hope and restoration. Born in Jerusalem to a priestly family, Ezekiel experienced a divine calling during his exile in Babylon. His visions, laden with symbolism and metaphors, were revealed to him through supernatural experiences and dreams. In these visions, Ezekiel received messages from God covering a wide range of subjects, from idolatry and corruption in Jerusalem to the spiritual and physical restoration of Israel. One of Ezekiel's most iconic visions is that of the Valley of Dry Bones, Ezekiel chapter 37, where God showed him how he could bring life to what seemed dead. This symbolized the spiritual restoration of Israel, which had lost hope during its exile, Ezekiel is also known for his detailed descriptions of the new temple and the vision of a river of living water flowing from the temple, symbolizing spiritual renewal and God's abundant love for his people. Ezekiel's message often strikes a balance between divine judgment and mercy. While he pronounced harsh warnings about sin and the need for repentance, he also proclaimed the promise of a new covenant and the final restoration of Israel. His purpose was not only to warn people about the consequences of their turning away from God but also to inspire them to return to Him and experience redemption and transformation. Number 8. Daniel. Daniel is a significant biblical figure in the Old Testament, known for his wisdom, faithfulness, and connection with God. His story is narrated in the book of Daniel, which is part of both the Hebrew and Christian Bible. Daniel lived during the Babylonian captivity, a period when the kingdom of Judah was conquered by King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon. Despite being in a foreign and hostile environment, Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, remained faithful to their beliefs and values. One of the most well-known stories concerning Daniel is that of the lion's den. According to the account, Daniel's enemies manipulated King Darius to issue a decree forbidding prayer to any god except the king. Daniel, however, continued praying to God and was thrown into a den of lions as punishment. Miraculously, the lions did not harm him, and Daniel emerged unscathed the next day, showcasing divine protection. Daniel's wisdom is also highlighted in his interpretation of dreams and visions. In the second chapter of the book bearing his name, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that deeply troubled him. None of his wise men could interpret it, but Daniel, guided by God, revealed the dream's meaning: a series of successive empires that would rise in history. Another prominent vision in the book of Daniel is the prophecy of the 70 weeks. In this vision, Daniel receives a symbolic chronology predicting the time until the coming of the Messiah. This prophecy has been subject to interpretation throughout the centuries, and some believers relate it to the life and work of Jesus Christ. Number 7. Isaiah. Primarily known as a prophet, Isaiah is remembered for his messages of warning, comfort, and hope directed toward the people of Israel during a period of challenges and transformations. The name Isaiah means Yahweh is salvation, establishing from the onset the central focus of his message: redemption and divine purpose. His ministry took place during the 8th century BC, a tumultuous period in Israel's history marked by external threats, internal divisions, and power struggles. Amidst this uncertainty, Isaiah emerged as a beacon of spiritual guidance and a prophetic voice. Isaiah was called not only to denounce the corruption and idolatry prevailing in the society of his time but also to announce the forgiveness and restoration promised by God. His words transcend temporal boundaries and resonate with relevance even today. His prophecies pointed toward the Messiah, presenting a vivid vision of the servant of Yahweh, who would suffer for humanity's redemption. A highlight in the book of Isaiah is chapter 53, which remarkably describes the passion and crucifixion of Jesus Christ centuries before it happened. This chapter reflects the profound connection between the scriptures of the Old and New Testament, emphasizing the continuity of God's plan throughout history. Number 6. Solomon. Solomon, an iconic figure in the Old Testament of the Bible, is remembered for his wisdom, wealth, and monumental constructions. The son of King David and Bathsheba, Solomon ascended to the throne of Israel around 970 BC, becoming the third monarch of the unified nation. Solomon's wisdom is a fundamental feature of his story. According to biblical narrative, God appeared to him in a dream and offered to grant him any wish he desired. Solomon asked for wisdom to rule with justice and discernment, rather than riches or power. Impressed by his choice, God granted him an exceptionally sharp mind and the ability to resolve disputes and dilemmas with great clarity. One of the most well-known anecdotes highlighting his wisdom is the judgment between two women claiming to be the mother of a baby. Solomon proposed dividing the child in two halves to appease both women, but the true mother revealed herself by offering to give up her right to save the child's life. The construction of his legacy also characterizes Solomon. His reign was marked by the building of the Temple of Jerusalem, a place of great religious and cultural significance for the Jews. This majestic building stands as a testament to the wealth and power of Israel during his time. Additionally, Solomon also constructed a magnificent palace, fortifications, and a series of projects that strengthened Israel's position on the international stage. However, despite his virtues, Solomon's reign was also plagued by challenges. His marital policy, which included numerous marital alliances with foreign women, caused religious and political problems by allowing the worship of other gods in the kingdom. These circumstances led to tensions that, after his death, divided the kingdom into the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Number 5. Joseph. Within the Old Testament of the Bible, the figure of Joseph stands as an emblematic example of perseverance, faith, and redemption amid adversity. His story, narrated in the book of Genesis, chapters 37 to 50, presents a tale of emotional and spiritual ups and downs that ultimately culminates in a remarkable triumph. Joseph, the son of Jacob and Rachel, stood out from a young age as a dreamer and a shepherd. However, his life took a dramatic turn when his brothers, filled with envy, sold him as a slave to foreign merchants. Thus, Joseph was taken to Egypt, where he faced injustice and betrayal but maintained his integrity and trust in God. Despite facing obstacles and difficulties, Joseph demonstrated his ability to interpret dreams. This talent opened the doors for him in the Pharaoh's court, where he became a trusted advisor. His wisdom and ability to foresee the looming famine led Egypt to prepare and survive the scarcity. In this position of power, Joseph had an unexpected encounter with his brothers, who, unaware of his identity, came seeking food during the famine. Joseph's story illustrates personal and spiritual transformation through forgiveness and reconciliation. Despite the harm caused by his brothers, Joseph chose forgiveness and received them lovingly. This act of grace not only healed the relationship with his family but also revealed the divine purpose behind all his trials and tribulations. Number 4. David. David, an iconic figure in the Old Testament of the Bible, is a character of profound historical and spiritual relevance. His story is a narrative of triumphs and challenges, virtues and weaknesses, making him an example of humanity in pursuit of divinity. David was born in Bethlehem and was raised as a shepherd. However, his story took a radical turn when he was anointed by the prophet Samuel as the next king of Israel, succeeding Saul. Although initially gaining recognition for his courage in facing the Philistine giant Goliath with a sling and a stone, Saul's envy and jealousy led him to live years of exile and persecution. Despite the hardships, David maintained his trust in God and became a charismatic and courageous leader, gathering a group of loyal followers known as David's mighty men. Throughout his years of exile, he showed wisdom by not seeking revenge on Saul when he had the opportunity, demonstrating deep respect for authority and a focus on God's plan for his life. Finally, David became king of Israel after Saul's death. During his reign, he managed to unify the tribes of Israel, establish Jerusalem as the capital, and bring the Ark of the Covenant to the city, symbolizing God's presence among his people. He is also known for his poetic ability and is attributed with many of the Psalms in the Book of Psalms, expressing a range of human emotions from praise to distress. Number 3. Elijah. Within the vast tapestry of biblical characters that populate the Old Testament, Elijah stands as an iconic figure of courage, faith, and struggle on behalf of divine will. His story, mainly narrated in the books of 1st and 2nd Kings, highlights his role as a fervent and tenacious prophet who challenged both the powerful of his time and adverse circumstances. Elijah was born in Tishbe, a village in the region of Gilead, at a time when Israel was divided and faced deep spiritual crisis. His name, which means, "My God is Yahweh," foreshadows his commitment to the God of Israel and his mission to revitalize faith in a people that had strayed into idolatry. His first significant act was to declare a drought in Israel, as a call for reflection and repentance for their unfaithfulness. One of the most emblematic moments in Elijah's life was the challenge to the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. Before a gathered multitude, Elijah asked for an altar to be built and a sacrifice placed upon it. Then, defying the prophets of Baal, he called for his God to answer by setting fire to the sacrifice. After hours of vain invocations, Elijah prayed to Yahweh, and a celestial fire consumed the sacrifice, demonstrating his unwavering loyalty to the true God. Another memorable episode was his encounter with God on Mount Horeb. In a moment of deep despair and exhaustion, Elijah experienced a divine manifestation that did not come in the strong wind or the earthquake but in a gentle whisper. This encounter renewed his spiritual strength and reminded him that even amidst difficulties, God was present. Elijah also played a crucial role in the lives of later biblical figures. He was the mentor and successor of the prophet Elisha, who would continue his legacy. His departure from this world was equally extraordinary. As he walked with Elisha, a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and carried him to heaven, an ascension that left all witnesses amazed. Number 2. Job. Job is a central and emblematic character of the Old Testament in the Bible, known for his story of suffering, perseverance, and unwavering faith. His account, found in the book of Job, raises profound questions about human suffering, divine justice, and man's nature in relation to God. Job was a righteous and just man, a devout believer who lived in the land of Uz. He enjoyed a prosperous and happy life, with a loving family, wealth, and health. However, in a sudden and dramatic turn, Job lost almost everything he had. His flocks were plundered, his wealth vanished, and his children died in a tragic accident. Despite this series of calamities, Job did not renounce his faith. Instead of cursing God, he shaved his head and humbled himself, acknowledging divine sovereignty over his life. This admirable attitude led to the famous passage where Job says, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Job, chapter 1, verse 21. Job's suffering did not end there. Soon, he himself was afflicted with terrible sores and physical pains. As his suffering intensified, his friends came to comfort him, but instead of offering solace, they engaged in theological debates about the relationship between sin and suffering. The friends suggested that Job must have done something wrong to deserve such suffering, while Job defended his innocence and questioned God's justice. The climax of the story occurs when Job, in his anguish and search for answers, finally has an encounter with God. God responds to Job from a storm, reminding him of his vastness and incomparable wisdom. God does not provide a direct explanation for Job's suffering but emphasizes the magnitude of his creation and the limitation of human understanding. Through this encounter, Job reaches a profound understanding of his position as a creature before the Creator. He recognizes his limited comprehension and accepts that some truths are beyond his reach. Finally, God restores Job's health, wealth, and family, doubling his previous blessings. Number 1. Moses. In the vast canvas of biblical history, Moses emerges as a monumental and visionary figure in the Old Testament. His life intertwines with the crucial events that marked the liberation and exodus of the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt, a fundamental event in the identity and beliefs of the Jewish people. Moses was born in a time of desperation and danger. The oppression of the Israelites in Egypt had reached intolerable levels, and to save him from the Pharaoh's order to kill all Hebrew baby boys, his mother placed him in a basket in the Nile River. He was rescued and raised in the royal court, where he received education and skills that would later play a crucial role in his leadership. Moses' story took a transcendent turn when, in his maturity, he had an encounter with God in the form of a burning bush on Mount Horeb. There, God called him to free his people and lead them to the promised land. Moses initially showed reluctance and doubt, fearing that his limited eloquence would make him unfit as a leader. However, over time, he became convinced of his mission and became the intermediary between God and his people. The process of liberating the Israelites from Egypt was not easy. Moses confronted the Pharaoh with a series of divine plagues, each more powerful than the last. These plagues culminated in the Passover, when the blood of a lamb on the doorposts of Israelite homes marked them while death passed over. This night of liberation was known as the Jewish Passover and is commemorated to this day. The climax of Moses' story came with the crossing of the Red Sea, a supernatural event in which the waters parted, allowing the Israelites to escape the pursuing Egyptian army. The journey through the desert was a time of challenges and learning for the people, and during this journey, Moses received the tablets of the law on Mount Sinai, establishing the Ten Commandments as a moral and spiritual guide. Although Moses led the people with wisdom and devotion, he also faced difficulties and moments of disobedience. One such moment cost him entry into the promised land, as he struck a rock instead of speaking to it as God had instructed him. Despite this deviation, Moses left an indelible mark on the history and culture of humanity. Moses passed away in the plains of Moab, unable to see the land he had longed for his people. However, his legacy endures in collective memory, in religious traditions, and in the influence he had on the development of ethical and moral thought. Moses, the bold leader who challenged empires and led his people to freedom, remains an iconic figure of inspiration and teaching in biblical history and beyond.